on, everyone? Sid Misra here, Certified Financial Planner. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm very excited because today we're going to be interviewing Ruma Mazumdar. She is a real estate and estate planning attorney based here in New Jersey. She is the founder of Key Esquire, a modern law firm helping professionals, homeowners, and entrepreneurs protect and grow their wealth through smart legal planning. She's licensed both in New Jersey and New York and brings a refreshing strategic approach to real estate transactions and legacy building. Ruma, welcome to the show.
Hello.
It's good to see you. Thank you for giving us some of your time. I wanted to bring you on because you do a lot of different things law-wise. I think it would be really, really beneficial to my audience, to the general audience, to hear what you have to say, hear how they can leverage you or a professional like you to help secure themselves and their assets as well. But first, I wanted to just help our audience get to know you a little bit better and know a little bit about your background and how you got into law. And I know you didn't start out in law, you started somewhere completely different. Can you tell us a little bit about your path that got you to Key Esquire and being an attorney?
Yeah, so growing up, South Asian household, the golden job was being a surgeon of some sort. And it was ironic because my parents were entrepreneurs. So it was funny that they were pushing me towards something completely traditional. But growing up watching them in entrepreneurship, I pretty much was just like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I don't want that risky life of just having to kill what you eat and always worrying about what you have to, how you're going to pay the bills, how are you going to generate revenue, all of that fun stuff that I now actually worry about. So I was like, okay, great. Like this, and you watch all of this, like the surgeon shows growing up, and you think, like, this is what it's going to be like. And I did some internships too in high school with like a famous New Jersey dermatologist. And like my first day on the job, I got sick. Like
Oh
it
boy.
was bad. So I was like, I should probably reconsider this. And my mom was like, no, you get used to it. Like, you're so young now. Don't worry about it. Like, when it's real, it'll be different. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that was real. But I still couldn't continue to follow that path. I went to NYU, but I started in '08, which was, right at the recession. And that was really tough for our family because my parents are mortgage brokers. So that really crushed them and hit them really hard. And starting at NYU at that time was expensive as well. Even though I had, a 50% scholarship to be there, it's still very expensive to live in the city, pay for books, tuition, all of that that's left over. So I started my pre-med courses, and I also got a part-time job as a legal assistant for a solo practitioner. As I'm getting through like freshman year physics, I am literally about to fail it. And I had to make the decision of like, do I want an F on my transcript forever? Because like, I'm never going to get into med school with this. Like, my med school track is over at this point. And so I went to the dean's office, I withdrew, didn't tell my parents anything about it. And I just kind of
Oh,
like dropped it on them one day, and they were horrified, mortified. My parents is my aunt on my dad's side and uncle, they're doctors, successful. He basically like threw me in the car, took me to their place, and was like, talk some sense into her. Like, what is she doing? Why are we paying for college? Like, such a prestigious university. And I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not cut out for it. I never really wanted to do it. This was your path for me. So oddly enough, then I was like, well, I have a part-time job in the legal field, which is a good backup, I imagine. But, my parents really weren't satisfied. And I just kind of had to like take it and run with it. So I really doubled down on like that experience. And then another thing that I did, because the city is so accessible, I just started cold calling attorneys, like big firms, small firms, solo practitioners. And I was like, tell me about your experience. I'm a freshman at NYU, so that automatically, everyone wants to talk to you. And I use that to my advantage. So I learned a lot along the way, asked them for advice. And the one thing they always said was just get real world experience. And so I was like, great, that's what I'm doing already. So I continued to do it, and I had different internships throughout college. And then, of course, I got my parents angry again because I didn't go straight into law school. I decided to take on a paralegal job, and I moved to Washington, D.C. And at that point, minimum wage was very different. And my starting salary was $35,000, which was less than yearly tuition for NYU at the time.
And you were living on that in DC.
In DC.
Oh,
And my parents did me a favor. They helped me rent a U-Haul, move to DC, and then they were like, we'll pay the first month of rent. You're on your own. You figure this one out. And here we are.
you made it.
I
You're
made
still
it.
here. You're still here. That's quite the story. And I think it's important, right, to understand, like, if you really know that you don't want to do something, to commit more time to it, right? You just, that sunk cost fallacy. Like, at a certain point, just get out of it and try to find something else.
Yep, exactly.
And
And sometimes it's hard because you want to, and especially like children of immigrant parents, like you want to do right by their sacrifice, but it's like not your sword to die on,
sure.
So,
There's a lot of guilt in South Asian and immigrant families, so
right? Yeah.
I'm sure you had
But
to deal
now
with
it's
that.
like, my parents are like, she has her own law firm.
She's an
She's doing
entrepreneur.
this, she's doing
Yes,
that.
she's a boss. Yeah. And I also love how you were cold calling lawyers, like getting that experience. A lot of people I don't think do that. Talking to real world people who do that job, I think that there's such a value in that. And if you tell them, you're a student, you're just looking to learn more, people are pretty open to talking about themselves and what they do.
Oh, and even more so now, especially with like our millennial generation, I think we're like looking to mentor people and bring them up to us
Yes,
and like just like change the playing ground now because it's just like not traditional like it used to be anymore. There's so
that's
many
so
different
true.
avenues to make money, have wealth, build your legacy now. It's like it's insane.
I love that. And so you talked a little bit about that journey. How did Key Esquire come to life?
Once I went to law school, I still followed kind of like that cookie cutter path of like graduating into, I went back to law school in New York City as well. So I went to Cardozo Law after 2 years of working in DC. And in DC, I mean, like to toot my own horn, I was working at the top litigation firm in Washington, D.C., like Covington and Burling, right across from the White House, like prominent people working there, so it wasn't just like a nilly-willy job, like it had some cred in the legal world. And so I started building like, the right pedigree basically to set myself up to graduate into a big law firm in New York City. And one of the fortunate things too is I went to law school on a full scholarship. So that definitely started turning things around for my parents. They were finally just like, okay, she's got a head on her shoulders about it. She's not, wasting money, wasting time. I was even going to take out a loan to like pay my expenses. And they were just like, no, like you stay within this budget. And actually,
Mhm.
they gave me a budget and I always went under it because I was like, any extra, like that's for me to keep. So,
Yeah.
I lived in a house with like three girls in Hoboken. I commuted to law school every day and, saved a ton of money that way too. And had like a really great 3 years of law school. And then I ended up starting as a litigator in Fox Rothschild. And then after 2 years there, I moved to Ackerman and really started having fun with like my job, my legal job finally. I had a great team, I had a great boss. We were doing like really interesting work in like the hospitality sector and really niching down into representing hotel owners in breach of management contracts. So basically we'd be suing like Hilton, Marriott, like all those big hotel names that you know. And so it was like a very like specialized area and like I was starting to learn about it, get good at it and everything too. And I was enjoying it. And then the pandemic hit.
Of course.
So
Another
you have
thing
like
to
a really
do,
hard
right?
look at your life at that point and you're like, is this what I want to do? And all of that pedigree that I'd been building, I sat down and I thought about it, especially because my mom actually encouraged me to think about it and was like, listen, you work all these crazy hours. I was like, but I get to travel to all these like great places. Like right before the pandemic hit, I had just finished a trial in Panama City, Panama.
Oh,
So,
wow.
I was like, but I get to do these really cool things up against these really big companies. But I thought about it and, realistically speaking, I never actually wanted to be a partner at a law firm. And that was something that I was on track for, and it would have been great. But also looking around at my boss, junior partners, senior partners, I mean, everyone was like super stressed out. Like, even I had like 2 bouts of alopecia because of the stress of just like being in the legal industry because it's just long hours, it's a lot of sacrifice. And my mom was just like, do you want to take over the family business? And obviously in COVID, the mortgage side went crazy. They were making a ton of money. So she was trying to entice me with that. And I was like, I'm not motivated by money. I mean, yes, I am. But like, I can't just like do away with this law degree that I worked so hard for.
Right, exactly.
And so she was like, well, why don't you just start your own firm? I was like, you're so funny. But I ended up doing it. And then I slowly kind of took on clients under a mentor of mine who was local in New Jersey and decided like I just wanted to try it and see if I liked it. And it was very different because I was so used to one litigation. And now I was in more of the transactional realm of what happens before you go to court, right? So building the actual contracts. And I was actually dealing with real humans, like the day-to-day consumer looking to buy their first home. And that is a totally different roller coaster of emotions and stress. You know, a lot of my job is really just like managing expectations and managing emotions, which is so different from reading, research, preparing for court, and all of that.
Going after big companies and doing all
Yeah,
that.
exactly. So I was like, do I want to do it? And at the time, it felt so much more like wholesome. And I was like, you know what? If it's now or never, like I have the chance to do it now. I know that if I wanted to go back to bit like corporate world, I could. Because even my boss was just like, I'm really sad to see you go. I obviously want to see you succeed, but like you'll always have a seat here, you know?
Yeah, there you
And
go.
so I was like, now's my chance. And the other thing was I wanted to do it kind of methodically. I'd seen and heard a lot about attorneys opening up their own practices, but then kind of getting stuck in just being a solo practitioner or just having like one person assisting them. I knew that I like didn't want to have like a corporate like company at all whatsoever, but I wanted it still to like grow and not just be me. So thinking through all of that, I was like, I need a brand name. So I started to have like fun with it too. And then Key Esquire was born. Like the
I
key
love
to your
that.
transactions, the key to your
Yeah,
life, you know?
that's great. I love that story. And you mentioned your parents being in the business. I also know, so your parents are on the lending side. I know your younger sister is a real estate agent. You are doing real estate law. Have you guys worked on deals together? And if so, what's that been like?
Yes. So I've worked on a ton of deals with my family, but my sister less so because she's actually rotated through all, she's got her mortgage license, she's got her title license, and
Hmm.
she's got her real estate license, but she's like just starting up. So fewer deals for her. But I work with my parents' office like all the time. And honestly, in the beginning, there was definitely like butting heads, especially about like, why are you charging so much? And I was like, I'm going to charge even more now because you said
Yeah,
something. So that was always like the biggest headache. And a little bit of it was like, oh, like, I know your dad, I know your parents, like, I've known you since you were a baby. Like,
or-
and I was like, okay, but like, I don't like you really know of me, but like, I've never met you.
yep, yep,
So there was a lot of like that kind of politics that I had to play in the beginning too, to just like, set the boundary of like, I'm a professional. I'm here to give you advice. You're going to hire me at the rate that I'm setting for myself. You can't just
yeah,
like call my dad and ask for a discount. It doesn't work the same way. And like, if you want a discount, that's perfectly fine. You can ask, but like be prepared to also just hear the reality of the situation, which is like, no, I can't give you a discount on my legal expertise. Like, do you want me to
yes,
also discount the service I'm giving you?
right, right. You're running a business here.
Exactly.
You said that your parents' business obviously inspired you. They own their business, they're entrepreneurs, but it also showed you how you didn't want to run your business. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that shaped Key Esquire, how you built the business and its culture?
Yeah, definitely. So like no shade to my parents. I mean, they did a wonderful job, raised two children, put us through NYU, all that fun stuff. But for all intents and purposes, because of the cyclical nature of real estate, and I think just demands on them as people, it's still a mom and pop shop. It's like my mom is operations, my dad is sales. One cannot function without the other. Something happens to one, the other one shuts down. And do they have like fulfilling lives? Like, I think so, but like at the same time, they're never disconnected from the work. And for me, I really was like, if you're going to go work for yourself, one, I wanted to create a place where people can come and work and grow, not just like in the job, but as people too. So I like invite that culture of like personal development and building a team. And plus, like, I didn't want to do it alone. I purposefully came up with the brand name because I want people to want to come work for Key Esquire, not for Ruma. And so I also wanted the ability to, I mean, fortunate for them, they went into it as a partnership. So they kind of had each other. I was going in it like solo dolo. So like I immediately needed to make sure I hired help. I also
Yeah.
have big goals for myself and I want, big things too for myself. And so I knew I just couldn't do it on my own and wanted to strategically build my firm and my practice so that it can function without me as well.
I love that. How many employees do you have at Key Esquire?
So I have myself and another attorney. I have a legal assistant. I have an executive assistant who like manages me. I also have a marketing person and I have an of counsel attorney as well.
You built a nice little organization there, and like you said, you have the ability to take some time off. You can step away, know that things are going to run how they're supposed to. Your clients are going to be taken care of in the way that they're supposed to.
Yep, exactly. And the nice thing about like just having a team too is the variety of the way people see issues and handle customers. Like everyone has a different personality on my team. And like there's like we can do good cop, bad cop. Like I always come in as the bad cop, and like I can't do that if it's just me doing it by myself. So everyone sees problems, or we don't even call them problems. We call them puzzles. They solve the puzzles differently. It gives, we stay fresh, cutting edge. Like the person who works in my marketing department, huge AI person, like
Oh, there you go.
blows my mind. So, and I also employ people like all over the world. So that's a really cool component too, like all of these cultures just like mixing together as well.
That's excellent. You got to have a good environment for people to kind of share ideas and collaborate, which is good. So good. We learned a little bit more about you. I want to pivot to what you do, who you help, how you help them. And I wanted to start with the real estate side. So just to kind of get right into it, what does a real estate attorney actually do?
Just wait for the check at closing.
There you go. Yeah. Apparently that's what all my friends say. So
No, so when I decided to get into real residential closings, I saw a piece of it from my parents' business, which was working with the borrowers. So, I kind of got like the emotional aspect of it, but I also understood from a technical sense that people just like don't understand anything about this process. So the way I built out my process, my system, we hold your hand and we educate throughout every single step. So typically, and most people are just like, do I really need an attorney? And at the base level, I'm like, well, if you read this contract, like, do you know exactly what every word or phrase, line, clause is saying? And most people will be like, yeah, like it's plain English. And I'm like, but it's really not plain
it's
English.
not.
It's not the way the court's going to interpret it. And you might think it says something, but it might mean something completely different. So basically, I come into the picture once we have home buyers or sellers who either put their house on the market or who are in the market looking for a home. They send out an offer and their offer gets accepted. That's how I typically work with the home buyer. My bread and butter has been first-time home buyers, probably because I have like such a good sense, one, referral relationship with my parents. And then when I was starting out, I was a little bit younger. Most realtors that start out, they also are buyer's agents. They work with a ton of buyers in the beginning. I really built my business on being patient with even new realtors. So now that they're more seasoned, it's just kind of like this word of mouth referral kind of bowl I've created, which is really nice. So that's been my bread and butter. And then on the sales side, of course, it's people that are relocating, downsizing, usually sometimes older people moving into like an active adult community, people selling in order to move into like a bigger place. So like newlyweds having children, really just, like the day-to-day consumer.
Okay, and then when we're talking about like these contracts, what specifically would be something that, the average person would miss in a contract that you, as a legal professional, you've seen so many of these. What's something that you would pick up on that they would miss, and what, the interpretation of that, right? How does that affect them in real life?
Yeah, and I think because of like the way the market has been going, there's such a fine line between like waiving contingencies and not waiving them. And I think there is sometimes confusion amongst the realtors and their customers about what exactly was negotiated in the contract. So someone will come to me and be like, I'm allowed to do home inspection, right? And I'm like, yes, you're allowed to do home inspection, but there's a part two to that. Once you do home inspection, are you allowed to ask for repairs? Are you allowed to ask for credits? Are you allowed to cancel the contract if you don't like what happened in the home inspection, right? So someone might answer, yeah, of course you can do home inspection, but then they forget about the next action, which is, well, what happens if like everything goes wrong in the home inspection? So those are some like nuances. Other things are, waiving the appraisal is huge, and people not knowing what their financial threshold is. And they get a pre-approval for a certain amount, so they think that they're good. But then we have an issue of like an under appraisal, and that kind of changes the whole structure of a loan. That changes the way we can negotiate the contract. And sometimes, there's situations where the buyers don't actually have the liquid cash that they need in order to close on the property because of an under appraisal. And then they've contracted differently. So these are all kind of like things that I go through during the attorney review period before getting under contract with someone, so that they really understand the risks of like what's in the contract and what options they have, and make sure that they're comfortable with their lender, make sure that they're comfortable with the condition of the home, make sure that they've even like walked the property. Some people see properties on like FaceTime, and then I'm like, but have you gone to the property?
Oh.
So things like that. What's another thing that people never consider? So they've been in the market forever, they get their offer accepted, and then their lease is ending in 1 month. And they don't think about the repercussions of what happens if we don't close by a certain date, and then your lease runs out, and then what do you do? So I kind of like educate my clients through all of these scenarios before we even like get under contract. So
That's very interesting. It's a lot of stuff that people don't consider that, I could imagine if you're a home buyer, there's so many things going on. You're trying to get your financials straight. You're looking at this house. You're worried about, is the offer I'm giving good enough? Is it going to be accepted? And then on top of that, there's all this stuff in the contract that most people, the average person like me, doesn't understand. I'm glad that we're doing this conversation so people can understand that a little bit better. You spoke a lot about the buyer side. What about the seller side? What should they be considering in these contracts?
So on the sales side, they want to typically make sure that the timeline is good for them. If they know most of the time, I have people that are relocating. A lot of them are building new construction homes. Some of them are just hoarders. They've been living there for like 40 some years, and they don't really estimate how much time they're going to need to move out. So that's a huge concern of mine. And then being realistic about just negotiations that can arise if they do allow someone to do home inspections, because the seller is emotionally attached. They think that their home is perfect, and I often have to explain the difference between selling a home as is and selling a home as is subject to the buyer's right to inspect it. So that is like a huge thing that always kind of gets lost. Everyone gets lost in that this is a seller's market and I can do whatever I want. And there's so many conversations I've had where I'm like, I don't care what market we're in. I work in the contract. I work within these papers, and they tell me what it exactly we can do and we can't do. And then they're like, oh.
Yeah, the market does not dictate that. That's we're playing within this field here. What are, on both sides, buyers and sellers, what are some of the red flags that they should be looking out for when they go through this process of buying and selling a home?
So definitely for buyers, like location. Is this a home that they're going to grow into, especially if they have children, looking at like the school systems and all that. And then budget, like really knowing your financials and knowing worst case scenario, best case scenario, especially with appraisals, because they're all over the place. And then the next thing would be like the age of the home, because that brings up like a whole different host of issues, and budgeting. And when I say budgeting, it falls into that too, because like even if an HVAC has been, if the home is like 20 years old, it's probably there with its original HVAC furnace and all of that. So you're going to need to budget for that replacement in the next maybe, 3 to 5 years to be safe. So thinking beyond just today I'm buying this home, and also the costs that come with maintaining a home too. That's been something that comes up a lot in inspections, where people are like, this home is so old and the roof needs to be replaced and the HVAC system is like 35 years old and everything is still functioning fine. It's just old. And I have really, no way to be like, you deserve a replacement, because there's no active issue going on. So having that conversation of like, you should budget, or maybe you should get like a home warranty is something that I often do too, when depending on the property type, condition, where it's located, things like that. On the seller side, the biggest ones are title issues like, have you been paying your taxes? Have you been paying your mortgage? Or do you have liens on the property? Did you stop paying your mortgage? Did you stop paying your taxes? Those are usually the biggest red flags for sellers. And then the other one is a lot of people in COVID upgraded their homes, renovated their homes, and did it all without permits.
Oh boy.
So that always becomes an issue when they go to sell.
That's true because at a certain point that has to be taken care of, right? The town, wherever they are, is going to want that stuff is accounted for, answered for. What are some of the repercussions of that, right? Not taking care of it beforehand and then being in a position where someone is giving you an offer and you're ready to sell.
Yeah, so it completely slows things down because what you have to do is contact the contractor that did the actual work. And if a contractor didn't do the actual work, you need to find a contractor who's going to go open up the permits and close the permits out. So you're, spending more money and more time. The biggest thing is delays. And then you also run the risk of like code violations. A lot of times people put bedrooms, bathrooms, and things into a basement, and it's not actually up to code. And so they have to like rip everything out. So
Yeah, those are costly mistakes. I think doing your homework beforehand is probably the best idea so you don't have to deal with that later on.
yeah. But us
So,
attorneys are just there to get our checks.
right, there's no value in anything that you just said. It's just there to collect a check. I hope people are really understanding there's a lot more to the home buying process than just, looking on Zillow, going with an agent and visiting a house. There's a lot of things. I mean, this is such a big investment. This is such a big purchase. There's a lot at stake, and I would hope that you pause, take some time, understand what we're talking about, and hopefully seek out a good professional to help you. And on that note, what should people be looking for when they're looking to hire a real estate attorney?
Yeah, definitely. I think I did like a reel about this of like top 5 questions to ask a real estate attorney or just any attorney you're going to hire for your real estate process, which is one, do you specialize in real estate? Do you actually handle residential closing? How many clients are you handling at a time? Do you have the bandwidth? Is it just you? Do you have a team? How does like the closing process work? And, what are your fees? How do you charge me?
If someone wasn't in New Jersey, obviously, if they're in New Jersey, they can work with you. You also work and service clients in New York, are licensed to do that as well. But if they're not in New Jersey, what's the best way to find a good real estate attorney? Is that just, Googling them or what?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely start with Googling, and then look at their Google My Business profile, look at their reviews. The next thing is look at their website, look at their digital presence. But I think really reviews will tell you a lot and whether they're serious, as well as their website often will tell you, do they keep it up to date? Do they write blog posts? Do they have a social media presence? Are they talking on there? Are they a real person,
Yeah, that's so true. The website's a big one. It's so interesting to like come across businesses in this day and age that like don't have a website or have one from like the late 90s, early 2000s. You're like, I don't know if I want to do business with you or contact
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of people who are out of state who might be moving into New Jersey who also just find me through Google. I mean, real estate though, also because it's such a big decision, a lot of it is, you're going to trust your realtor to give you recommendations too. So you want to take those with a grain of salt, research them still, look at their reviews, I think is the biggest thing, and then call around to a few attorneys and see like how quickly can you get an appointment? Who are you actually speaking to when you get that appointment? Like I still do all of my sales calls. So like, they get scheduled with my intake person, but then I offer 15 minutes of my like attorney time to really like say I'm available. This is what the process is like. This is what you work. This is how you work with me. But then I have a team set up to kind of like take it through closing.
Love that. Okay, so let's do a little section here. I wanted to talk about some of the real estate myths to bust, some of the things that I've been hearing about that I wanted to get your take on, right? So the first one is that I don't need an attorney. My agent is going to handle everything for me.
So did your agent go to law school?
Number one, probably not.
Did your agent pass the licensing exam? So, I mean, agents actually, they do it all in a lot of states. And it's completely up to you if you want to hire an attorney in any situation, whether you're getting divorced, personal injury, got into an accident, someone stole money from you. Like, it's always your choice. Like, there's pro se for a reason. People can do that. But how successful are they, right? So I don't know. It's up to you. Like, if you're going to spend $500,000 on something, you probably want to spend like a few $1,000s just to make sure that you don't waste any more money, just in case. It's a big investment. You're signing a contract, and no matter how many deals your agent has done, they're never going to be able to tell you legally what your contract means for you and they might be able to resolve it, right? But I know in states where attorneys are not a part of the actual buy sale process, there is way more litigation because of like defects that get discovered after closing, title issues that don't get cleared before closing, people that lose their deposits because the dates and deadlines weren't negotiated properly. There's just more that can go wrong without an attorney than will go right.
That's true. That's true. And like you said, I mean, you're spending so much money on this big purchase. Don't start pinching pennies right now in a situation that, like, it's a legal contract. You will be held to the terms of that contract.
Yep, exactly.
The second myth that I want to bust is attorney review is just a formality. It's not something that, we really need to spend a lot of time on.
So that is false, because oftentimes your contract gets negotiated either by you personally or by your agent. And oftentimes the agent's going to put whatever they need to in the contract to get it accepted. And they may still be explaining it to you as you're going through the motions of making an offer and negotiating back and forth. But the reality and the implications of whatever that offer says, you really don't know until we get into attorney review. And there's been so many times where I get into attorney review, I explain what an appraisal means. And then they're like, wait a minute, that's not what I heard about it. And then it's like, all right, well, let's have a conversation with your lender. I get like proof of funds and I'm like, this doesn't really match up because the gap you said you have is 100K and I'm only seeing $30,000 of excess cash. So especially working with me, I do a little bit of a deeper dive in attorney review than maybe other attorneys might, because I look at the picture like holistically and like just beyond the contract. I look at it like logically and for someone's real life experience, not just like what's happening on paper.
Next one is once I sign, the deal is final. That's it.
No, that's why we have attorney review. And that's why the seller can still accept other offers in attorney review.
Number 4. This one's interesting because you mentioned title insurance, but I don't need title insurance. I'm buying from my family. I'm buying from my friends.
I know. And those are the ones that always screw you the most.
Oh, no. You're like, I'm speaking from experience here. I know.
No, I'm not. But it's just like, people don't know what title insurance actually covers, and people don't know what a title search even means. Sometimes people don't even know that they have judgments against them, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, sure, your family member or your friend has like stayed out of trouble. They say they're up to snuff with paying their mortgage, paying their taxes, but like, are you going to go check the township records? Are you going to go call their lender? Like, you don't know these things, right? Mm-hmm. And title insurance is there to protect you from like the day you close all the way back in time. So you're completely protected. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts that you own this property free and clear of any liens, judgments, and all of that. So it's like a no-brainer. And it's like a one-time premium of a couple $100. Like, why not have that peace of mind?
It's so worth it. The cost benefit is it's just
like I had a case where we got a survey done and we found out the neighbor's driveway was 1.5 feet onto the property that my client was going to purchase. We made the neighbor redo the whole driveway, and they went to their title insurance over it.
And there you go. And that's why you have that.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. The last one, closing day means everything is done. I don't have to worry about anything else.
So closing day is just the start of your journey.
Oh boy. People think it's like over, and it's like, no, you have a long journey ahead of you.
No, I mean, you get your keys. It's super exciting, but then you have to make sure that you set up your utility accounts. You make sure that you're getting the tax bills. You make sure that you start your internet, you change your locks. Like, there's so many things on closing day directions that we do provide. But on some sense, some clients will leave and be like, don't you have like a booklet for me? I'm like, nope, yeah. This is life. This is life. This is it.
Yeah. Be an adult now.
Time to adult.
There you go. Okay. So that's excellent on the real estate side. If you're looking to buy a home, you're in that process, make sure that you understand what an attorney can do, what an agent can do, what they can't do, and also make sure that you're asking the right questions. You're considering hiring an attorney again. This is a big purchase. The cost for this protection, for this service, to have a professional like Ruma guide you through this, it's well worth it, right? Again, you're making a huge purchase here. Ruma, you also recently added a new kind of line of business, a new offering with Key Esquire, and that's estate planning. What inspired that shift, and why did you want to offer those services?
Sure. So I realized, once my clients closed, one of the things they would always ask me is like, hey, do you do like a will or a trust or anything like that? And I'd always refer it out because I know it's very state specific and I don't want to mess around with it if I don't have knowledge of it. So I hired like an of counsel attorney, and that's the one who assists us with the estate planning. And I also wanted to, because I kept getting enough calls for it, I was finally just like, I should just handle it in-house and continue to provide my clients with that Key Esquire service that they're expecting. So I wanted to help them be on the closing table. And it's kind of like a no-brainer because you come to me for your real estate, you purchase this huge asset. Now we have to talk about how to protect it, and what happens to you. Like, life happens, emergencies happen, but like life continues to keep going. But if you have no plan in place, it becomes such a headache for your family members around you if you have no plan. So that was kind of what inspired me. And then two, I got divorced, and I realized a couple months like after my divorce, I was like, oh my God, I have to change all my beneficiary designations. And like, you just assume like I'm married, so everything's going to pass to my spouse. And like the state has a plan for you, but like in this situation, I was like divorced. I wouldn't want all of these things to pass to like my spouse at that point. So so that had me thinking too. And I'm a business owner, and I started thinking about business succession, like in case anything happens to me. There's like, the bar committee is having this discussion about like, are we ethically required to mandate having a succession plan in place? Because if something happens to you, what happens to all your clients? So just thinking through that, I was kind of like, this just makes so much sense. Like, this is like so important, and I feel like people just have this misconception that it's only important once you get older. It's only important for like the super ultra wealthy rich people, because you think about like trust fund babies and like
Right.
dynasty trusts and all that kind of stuff. But it's like these mechanisms can be used by like my clients too, because it's important. Like, we have this world of blended families. I get a lot of clients now who are that profile, or people like don't even get married anymore, right? And if one partner dies, the state's going to say, well, you don't have an official spouse, so now this goes to your family members, and like that's not how they wanted it to go. So like I started thinking through all of these different scenarios and was like, this is so important, so relevant. I'm going to start educating on it and offer the service.
I love that. It's super important. It's something that I talk about in my practice when I do client reviews. I'm always asking them, especially if they have families, are you doing your estate planning? Do you have those documents? On that note, though, what core documents should every adult have, should every family have as part of their estate planning documents?
Yeah, so we typically offer like two different tracks. We offer like a will-based track and then a trust-based track. The will-based track is pretty simple. It's for people that, may not have a lot of assets and aren't too worried about probate. And the nice thing about like New Jersey is that the probate process, meaning when someone passes away, you have to like take the death certificate, go to the court and just say, hey, I have to wrap up this estate. I'm the one, in their will to do it. And the state will just like grant you the papers like immediately. It's not this like long drawn out process like it is in like New York or Florida or California. So, we have the will-based package, and those are for like pretty straightforward. You might have a piece of property or you might not. Like, I'm a good contender for like a will-based package because like I don't have that many assets. I'm not worried about the probate process right now. And like business succession is done through like my operating agreement. The trust-based plan is for people with like multiple properties in different states, blended families, just maybe a higher threshold of assets too, just depending on like the net worth of the estate. And so core documents like the trust plan will have everything that's in the will plan. So it's like a revocable living trust, last will and testament, an advance directive, which is used when, say, you get into a car accident, you're in a coma, and like you find out that like nothing's gonna like really save you, and you're just getting like life sustaining support right now. You can sign this document saying like, just pull the plug basically and give me drugs so I pass like without
Your
pain.
wishes, right? It's what you want
Yeah,
to see
their
happen. Yeah.
wishes. Exactly. Then you should have a medical power of attorney. So again, if anything happens to you, you have someone designated to make decisions. If you need surgery and you can't make that decision, all of that. Then you should have a financial power of attorney so that someone can continue making, mortgage payments, manage your property, pay your bills on your behalf, all of that. And then we also include like personal property memorandum. So if someone has like really nice bags or art or something that they want to give to specific people, they can notate that. And then we also have like funeral and like burial instructions too, right? If you have a mausoleum, if you have a plot, you give people these instructions of like what exactly you want, don't have a funeral, throw a big party, like all of that kind of stuff. So those are like, I would say like the core docs that we encourage people to have.
Absolutely. And then kind of bringing it back to real estate, I mean, how should a homeowner think about blending estate planning into, their purchase of real estate?
So as a homeowner, typically you're going from like renting to now having your first big investment. So you definitely want to have at minimum a plan in place, and especially like if you have children and if you have minor children. So you want to account for who would take care of them if anything happened and what would happen to your house. Does your spouse, if you pass away, have enough funds and everything to keep everything going? Kind of like just like a holistic planning of like, God forbid anything happen in an emergency, who are your people and what's going to happen?
Absolutely. Okay. It's giving you the ability to kind of decide how you want things to be handled.
Exactly. And it's like preventing stress also from the family members too. It's like, okay, no, I know exactly where to go for where that binder is and like what I'm supposed to do. It's just transparent. And then you have the peace of mind too that like if anything happens, you're not leaving everyone in shambles just running around. I mean, I think it's like also most important for like, especially when you have children and naming guardians. That's like a huge thing. I mean, expect the unexpected. It's a little morbid, but I think like planning is better than not having a plan.
That's so true. Yeah, you don't want to be in a situation where something happens and your family's just kind of left figuring out, what you wanted to see happen or how they're going to get the funds to support themselves. Doing a little bit of planning beforehand prevents all of that trouble and just kind of lets things happen more smoothly. And that's a tough time for them, right? If you lose someone close to you, you don't want to be dealing with the court system and trying to figure that out because you're already grieving a loved one.
Exactly. And another thing is it's like a mechanism to also like protect and grow your wealth, right? Like you can take advantage of certain like estate planning with tax structures and things like that and how you kind of structure your assets. So there's like that aspect too of like you're working so hard acquiring all these things, you're successful, like you want to make sure that it's protected, you can have tax advantages from it, and then it goes to who you want it to go to ultimately. Like you work so hard, why? So that like
Yeah.
it's a mess.
No, that's so true. And I've been talking to clients recently about trusts. We do life insurance for them, and you can imagine like if both parents pass away, they each have, let's say, $1 million. That's $2 million that goes to the kids, plus the retirement accounts, plus let's say any property. Most of that stuff would pass to them when they're 18. And I don't know most 18-year-olds that could manage having all that money at once, right? So I think a trust, I've been talking to my clients about trust as another way to kind of control your assets, make sure that your money, your hard-earned assets are being used in a way that you want them to be used
Yep.
for education, buying a first home. They're not getting it all at once. Maybe there's work requirements or staying out of trouble requirements, things like that.
And people think it's just simply like naming their children on their bank accounts, naming their children as like the contingent beneficiaries for their retirement accounts and their life insurance. If your child's not 18 and you have no trust in place or plan in place, your child's not even going to get the money. Like it's going to have to go through a whole court procedure where the court decides who to assign as a guardian. And who the court decides may not be the same wish that you have. So they have a delay in getting their money too. So we've had like lately, like I would say, huge uptick in people getting trusts in place because of all of these quote unquote non-probate assets that people are taking advantage of, like life insurance and retirement accounts and things like that.
Absolutely. Let's go back to real estate. What common mistakes do you see families make when they're looking to pass down real estate? I mean, it's one of the big things in this country. It's a great way to build wealth as an investment, right? Buying real estate, buying properties. having that value appreciate or generating income, you've worked hard to make that. If something happens to you, you'd want those assets to go to your beneficiaries. What mistakes do you see when people are doing that?
Yeah, so sometimes I will just see like clients will ask me like, "Hey, can I just put my son or daughter on the deed too?" Not realizing what kind of tax implications they're creating for them. And then I often get people will buy investment properties in their own name, as opposed to setting up a holding company or setting up an entity to actually own the investment property. Doing like lease agreements in their personal names, not shielding themselves from potential liability, not getting proper home insurance, liability insurance, umbrella coverage, all of that.
This is why you need to be talking to an attorney. That's a lot of stuff to consider. And, these aren't small mistakes when they happen, right? These are costly mistakes.
And unwinding it is so much harder. Like right now, I have, this super sweet old couple. They have a 4-family unit that they own, and it's in their personal name, but they have like these 4 tenants living in their building, and they're like, we want to put it into a trust. And I'm like, I wish like I was a part of this transaction before, because I would have recommended that you actually purchase the property in an entity. But now there's
Right.
a mortgage on the property, which they cannot just pay off, which like prevents us from actually moving it into an LLC and then reassigning the shares to a trust.
Yeah. So if you don't set it up right in the beginning, you're going to be in trouble trying to figure out ways to get around stuff. And
Especially if you don't have like the cash flow to get around the mistake.
true. Money solves most problems, and if you don't have it, then yeah, you're in trouble. All right. What about, when we're talking about estate planning, in your view, what's the best time for people to be considering this, to begin the process of sitting down with someone and building out their estate plan?
I mean, like as soon as you have a bank account.
Yeah, any money at all.
Any money at all. Anything that's worth having.
Okay, there you go. And obviously, as life, changes, right? You should be making regular updates to that.
Yeah. We recommend every 3 years you check out your plan again. In my firm specifically, we check in yearly just to see like, hey, all the people you named, you still like them? Have you had a baby? Did you get divorced? Did you buy more property? So we check in yearly, but every 3 years you should reevaluate your plan.
Okay. I mean, that's great that you guys check in yearly to make sure. And if there is a change, obviously, then that means that the estate plan has to be updated, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. I see this in my business too. Why do you think so many people avoid talking about estate planning, talking about this kind of stuff? And what have you found works when you try to get people to move past that?
Mostly because estate planning has been couched as like, having to face your mortality or, death. And it's also something ancient. An estate is like this fancy word that makes you think you need to have like this lavish like mansion. And only then should you be thinking about estate planning. So I think because of that misconception, that's kind of why people don't look into it. And I think for the longest time too, like I get obviously a lot of children calling in for their elder parents who now want to get something in place because they're like, hey, like they finally face the fact that they're old, right? So it's just kind of that conditioning. And it's one of those things that's like just it's not a priority. It's like I'm thinking about it, but like I'll get to it later. So the way I tend to like create urgency around it is just like everyday things. Like I'm like, do you own a business? Like what happens if you cross the street and get hit by a bus? Oh, you're going on a 4-week vacation to Europe. What if something happens while you're all on a plane over there?
Yeah, that's so true.
So
Do you want the government involved in handling your businesses
yeah,
and
like
business,
that
right?
side hustle that just is making you $1 million a year now. Do you just want it to like kaput if something happens to you? All that crypto you managed to purchase, like who's got the key to it, or is it just going to disintegrate?
That's true. Yeah, just locked away on a vault somewhere. All right, so the same thing that we did for real estate, I want to bust some myths here. Some of this we did discuss, but I think just revisiting it to make sure the audience gets it is going to be important. So number one is estate planning is only for the wealthy or the elderly.
Like I said, if you have anything worth having, it's time to think about getting a plan in place.
Absolutely. I have a will, so I'm covered. I don't need any other documents.
So the will only protects you actually like when you die, right? Like that's just like you passed away. Now what happens to the things you left behind? But what protects you while you're living? That's going to be the powers of attorney, healthcare, medical, the advance directive, any HIPAA releases. Like that's what protects you when you're living. So it's not just a plan for like when you die, it's a part of it, but it's also a plan for while you're living.
So everything automatically goes to my spouse, so I don't really need any other paperwork.
So you think.
So you think that's not correct. Yeah, according to Ruma, that's not correct. Are there situations where, I mean, can you give any examples of how this would play out, or
The spouse situation? So, I mean, I think like
would that be
I think
more of
it's
a
almost
blended
like,
family kind of,
yeah, right.
you
Like,
know?
so I almost think in right now, also a lot of people just aren't getting married, and
Mm,
the states don't always recognize like domestic partnership in that way. And if you don't fall into that category, what happens is like the court just discounts whoever your partner is, you know? And so that's an issue. And then another thing is also like, say a lot of times, you know, I'll have like the children call in for their parents, and then I'll be like talking to their parents, and I'm like, oh, are your children married? And they're like, yes, they are, but I want to protect my assets in case they get divorced, right? So you might think you're just going to be happy and married forever, but also life can happen. You may not really be happy when things happen, and then you don't have a plan in place when, you know, you pass away. And also blended family. So I had one client who called in. She's purchasing a home with her partner. They're not married. He's got a child from a previous marriage, and they also have a child together. And she's like, I want to make sure that this home goes to our child and not to like any of his, you know, prior marriage.
yeah, and you need paperwork to say that. Otherwise, there's a dispute. There's, you know, you leave it up to the government to kind of figure that out.
Exactly.
All right, and the last one, we did touch on this as well, but I made a will years ago. That's still good, right?
I mean, it could be, it could
Mhm.
be, depends. But like as we said, you know, your life constantly evolves. Who you might have named 10 years ago, are they even still around? Do they live in the state? Do you still have a good relationship with them?
Mm.
Are they all mentally there to actually make the decisions you like want them to make? You know, I had a client, he was like, no BS, older gentleman, had like a 3-page will, and he was just like, he's like, wow, this packet seems like it's gonna cover me for everything, you know? So like, you know, so you want to always reevaluate because the laws also change. And so you want to make sure you have updated documents based on the law too.
That's great advice. Ruma, we went over a lot here. I really appreciate your time. Before we end here, is there any final advice for home buyers, sellers, and those looking to protect their assets?
I would say, you know, just like preparation is key, due diligence is key, and working with the right professionals is key. Whether you work with you, Sid, or you call my firm, just make sure you're doing the due diligence, especially when it comes to these big investments in your life. And, you know, if you have a family, you're building a family, you're building a business, you're building a life, right? These are very important things that need to be protected. And things obviously cost money to protect, but it's well worth the investment. You shouldn't look at it as if it's like, you know, expensive. Look at it as an investment for your peace of mind.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, you are protecting your assets, your investments, things that you work so hard to get and to build up. You should take some time, take a little bit of money to protect that.
Exactly.
Ruma, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your story, your expertise around real estate law, estate planning. If you're buying a home, if you're thinking about how to protect it, there's a lot of useful takeaways in this interview here that you can put into action. For those watching and listening in in New Jersey and in New York, who need help with real estate transactions or setting up their estate plan, you should definitely check out Ruma and her firm, Key Esquire. You can find her at esquire.com and on Instagram at Key Esquire for educational content, updates, and more. And I'll have the links in the description for you guys to be able to click on. Once again, thank you so much for joining us and helping us, educating us. We really appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I had so much fun chatting. And for anyone who listens to this specific episode, feel free to DM us, Misra, and we'll send you our real estate checklist and our estate planning checklist.
That's awesome. That's really, really good stuff that you guys can use to put into place and kind of have a plan going forward on how to protect
It'll give you
your
time
assets.
to think about it. You don't have to engage me right away, but just start thinking about it.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Ruma. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.